Welcome back to another episode of Outliers. I'm your host, Molly Hawkins, and today I have Shannon Dunn-Downing, a woman of many firsts. She was an early pioneer of snowboarding, not just as a woman, but setting the tone for generations to come, showing so many of us what it means to carve out a path, and that just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean it's not possible. She was one of the first women to don her name on a pro model snowboard. She can claim first on many tricks on a snowboard and in the half pipe, and was the first U.S. medalist in the 1998 Nagano Olympics, not just as a female, but as one of the first medalists from the U.S. It is an honor and a privilege to have you with me here today, Shannon. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Molly. I'm so stoked to be here. Definitely an honor and a privilege for me to just be talking with you.
How does it feel to hear? I mean, it's been a while since you were in the Olympics. You're still super relevant in snowboarding, I'd argue. And how does it feel to hear that intro?
It's very weird, as if I didn't even do any of these things, because it's been so long. And really, I took a long break from being in the snowboard industry. So my career spanned from 1990 to 2005. I had my first son in 2003, and then another son in 2004. And I tried to keep the dream alive and tried to stay a pro snowboarder, but with two little babies and my husband traveling, I was like, I want to be a mom. I want to go all in and focus on being a mom. And so I feel like that was a privilege for me. Financially, we were able to do that without me working full time. So that was just like a joy of my life. And, now they're grown adults, and I've had more time to kind of step back into the snowboard industry and really ride for myself. And it's really been incredible on a lot of different levels. So just getting back into, just kind of reconnecting with Boarding for Breast Cancer, for example. I'm kind of helping to coach and mentor my best friend's daughter, who's 14 years old. I'm on the board of USASA snowboarding, which is, amateur series snowboarding. So I can kind of give my perspective on some things, especially for girls and women. So I'm kind of entering a new territory in a way. And for me, it feels like I'm pioneering certain things in my sport once again, which is exciting.
Hell yeah. Yeah, man, I got to tell you, 14-year-old Molly, it would be freaking out right now that I'm talking to you. We'll talk more about early days of snowboarding here in a bit, but I'd love to set the stage for folks who have no idea who you are. How would you describe Shannon Dunn-Downing if asked?
Shannon Dunn started in 1988 snowboarding because it sounded so fun to do. I grew up in Steamboat, Colorado, and that was the first year. 1987, 88 was the first year Steamboat ski area first allowed snowboarding. So I tried it, loved it from the very start. I skied before that, and I just became a part of that culture and this new emerging sport. And I just kind of grew up with snowboarding, and I got to see it just go from this rebellious, crazy person sport to now mainstream Olympic sport of all nations are competing in snowboarding, and it's just grown to this thing that I could never have foreseen. So just, I guess I'm part of the pioneering phase. I got to have eyes on it and a firsthand perspective. So I have lots of stories. I have, I can see and tell about the growth of the sport, how things have changed, how things have remained the same. But all in all, I feel like, I'm just a snowboard girl, but also, now I'm a mom. So I guess that would be part of my life experience. But I've always just kind of kept that youthfulness, I feel like. And it's really hard to kind of grow up. So I kind of feel like I never fit into the normal life of like a parent even, and I never really fit in. So where I fit in best is in the snowboard culture. I feel so comfortable, and that's like my home. It's youthful, it's fun, it's exciting, it's ever changing, and I kind of like that part of life, and I kind of keep that as like almost a mentality for myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I've learned now as an adult, closer to my mom's age than most of my employees. I learned as an adult that, a lot of the things that we learned in our young adult years, like you have to grow up and take life seriously, and that's no way to live. And I think most people, the reason why people have a midlife crisis is because, yeah, you finally have maybe resources, you've kind of figured some things out, and you're like, wait, I forgot to play along the way. And a lot of people are like finally able to start doing that again. And I think the people who do live in spaces like snowboarding or in sports or in arts or creative, communities, in some way never lose that or remind themselves along the way how important play is.
Yeah, you're right. Like play is life. It's life giving. Yeah, I think you're right. Like in the action sports, we're always around that younger demographic. And so young people just don't have a problem playing. And, when as an adult or like, especially around just your typical parents just get so serious and they're like driving in what they want to see, how they want to see their kids grow up. And it can just be so, I don't know a better word, gnarly. It's so gnarly.
Yeah.
Like, parents of kids in sports and stuff like that. It's just kind of relentless.
I'm not telling anybody how to raise their children, especially since I don't have any children. But I do think oftentimes there's that fear of, that as an adult, you're like, well, I now know this. I wish I would have known this when I was young. So they try and over-index on trying to impress and, emphasize those things for their kids and forcing it in a lot of cases sometimes.
Yeah, there's a big force, trying to enforce certain things in like kind of a negative way instead of just playing, like play with your kids and getting on their level, not like trying to get your kids on an adult level, which I don't think that I found that doesn't work. I've made plenty of mistakes, but I don't know. I just maybe there's something wrong with me where I think I'm like stuck in a 12-year-old mentality, which I don't think that's great all the time.
I'll ask your husband about this later.
Yeah. And he's like, I married my opposite, which I think works well because he's very like level-headed, very serious. And here I am. I'm just like the little tornado, like.
I love that. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should find someone who's a good complement in contrast. Well, you have done well for yourself as you've Tasmanian deviled your way through your life, if you are a little tornado. Right. So I consider you to be an outlier in so many ways. Now, I'm wondering, one of the questions that I ask a lot of folks here is, do you think, you were born a certain way? Was it in your DNA? Is it, you at some point chose to choose a path unlike everybody else around you? Not just, to, train harder, go to the Olympics and all this stuff, but like everybody's skiing and you're like, yeah, I'm going to hop on this long, heavy board, and do something different, right? Do you think you were born a certain way? Were you always tenacious and audacious and, just curious?
Okay. I think I can maybe break this down. I have an older brother who is super aggro. And, well, growing up, okay, he's not right now, but growing up, he was just this high energy, get into everything, sporty little boy. And I was just right on his heels, trying to keep up with him. But he was also the big brother who wanted to include me because he was always like, yeah, Shan, you got to do this. So whatever he was doing, he would just grab my hand and I would have to go with him in anything. So, okay, so that's one thing. And then my parents, my dad especially, he was always an athlete. You know, he played semi-pro hockey. We grew up around an ice rink. We lived in Chicago until I was 9 years old. And then my dad, his business, he was an entrepreneur and he actually went bankrupt. So he decided to go kind of the safety route and get like a safe career. He became a State Farm insurance agent, which moved us to Steamboat Springs, Colorado. So our life totally changed from the suburbs of Chicago to the mountain life, very small mountain life town of Steamboat Springs. And at that time, when we moved, there were maybe 5,000 permanent residents, super small town.
Wow.
So then that Steamboat Springs is known as Ski Town, USA. So our life radically changed at that point. But my dad, you know, I was like, you know, little daddy's girl. So I would play sports with my dad, every sport. And I didn't want any special treatment because I was a girl. So if I lost and they like pretended that I won or I did good, I would get so upset. So I was a very feisty little girl. And before we moved, I was very into gymnastics and figure skating. And right before we left Chicago, you know, when I was like 8, I went to more of an elite gymnastics academy. And I was so excited because they were like nitpicky about like my back bend and you had to do a perfect handstand. But I loved that. Like the more they could tell me if they said, oh no, this wasn't good, or, you know, some kids might take that as a negative or they're a failure. But I was like, no, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I want to be like the best. So I always had that kind of internal drive in me. And I always, you know, our family watched the Olympics, like, you know, everything shut down in our household to watch the Olympics. So that was my dream. I looked up to those athletes as everything. Like, you know, I wish that I could be an Olympic athlete someday. So I don't know, I guess I was born with this little feisty little attitude because I was definitely, you ask my parents and my mom's like, dude, I have in my baby book actually like, oh, she's like the sweetest baby ever. And I don't know what happened, but she is a terror. And I kind of wonder like I'm super sensitive. So who knows what that was? I don't know. I sometimes think like, could it have been like vaccines, like I was sensitive to, or food? I am super sensitive to food. And back then, you know, my parents didn't know like how to regulate foods, and all these like junk foods came out promoted. They were promoted for kids, and so it's like, oh, first thing for breakfast, I would eat Fruit Loops or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd just be such a terror. Anyway, I think I definitely have a personality. So you're asking, was I born like that? Well, I guess I have like a tenacious personality on top of I have a family that was very competitive, sport-minded. And, you know, when snowboarding came along, my brother and I traveled and competed. And, you know, my brother was inspirational about like for me to compete because I was super shy and I didn't want to. And he's like, no, you need to do this with me. So I did. And then on top of that, since snowboarding wasn't very popular and there was no pathway for a career, my dad saw a pathway. And so he really encouraged us. And my mom did too. But, you know, my dad's like the entrepreneur business guy. And so he was always talking with people and trying to get us sponsors and meeting people at the contest, trying to like figure out the way to make this happen for us. And then, of course, we had to make it for ourselves. You know, we had to make that happen. on our end as well. So I think all those pieces came together at the right time. And, you know, as far as an outlier situation, I was the perfect age.
Yeah.
Demographic, I was 16 when I learned. It was this new emerging sport. By the time I was 18, we went on this pro tour of America. So I think all the pieces fit together to make it happen.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like, I've talked to all these different folks, and if you've read the book Outliers, they talk about how it's not just one thing. They talked about how Bill Gates just, yes, he was super smart, but he happened to be, have access to one of the first supercomputers because his mom worked for the university, and he could ride his bike down there and mess around and get his hours in before anybody else had that opportunity. I mean, you were the right age coming up, and there weren't as many people to vie for that space at that time, and you also had this drive and tenacity, so it's like, I think it's a mix, right?
Yeah, I do. I think it is definitely a mix in the timing of everything, and the doors opened like perfect timing. It is crazy. It's like my parents backed us. My brother and I were able to, like, for example, go drive for 1 month up to Blackcomb and Whistler. And it'd be cheaper to rent a condo, buy a pass, and cook our own food. And they still, to this day, are like, I don't know what made us as parents allow you guys to do that. But they saw like a possibility, and they allowed my brother and I to do that. And then on the way home from that trip, we stopped at Mount Hood for one day, and that's when I met the team manager for Sims, who gave me my first sponsorship, and that opened the doors to everything. So it was like one day I met my future opportunity here, and in that moment, they had the glacier up there had a public half pipe. And so I was hiking that, and my brother was like, "Hey, we have to drive home. Time to go now." And my best friend was up there. We swooped her up actually from Seattle. And we're like, "We're going to Mount Hood. You're coming with us, and then we'll drive you home." But they're done with the day, and I'm like, "I'm not going home yet." And I just kept hiking the pipe, and I couldn't stop. I was on this like mental high. I think it was like I was dehydrated, hungry, all the things. I don't know. But I got into this mode where no one was going to tell me to stop hiking this pipe and try all these tricks that I was trying. But it was at that very moment where the manager came by and said, I've been watching you snowboard, and I want to sponsor you. Here's my card.
Man, I literally just got chills just imagining that feeling. And it had to have been exciting because back then everything was new. Every trick you tried, everything that you did, like, was yours, and it was pioneering. It had to feel so rewarding. Oh my gosh. And how old were you when you were hiking that pipe?
That I think I was 18 or 17. Wow. 17. And I was like, this is the best thing I've ever done in my whole life. I love this so much. Like, I didn't want to stop because this was like my last chance. Then I was going home to Steamboat, then over Glacier, then I'd have to wait for winter. And actually that following year I was signed up, or I was enrolled to go to CU in Boulder. So I kind of was like, man, I might just have to go to college for the next 4 years, and this might be done with my snowboarding.
Did you go to college, or you did?
Yeah,
and you made snowboarding weight.
Well, I didn't, because I went to Colorado University in the fall, and then an opportunity came to compete, and I decided I would take the spring semester off and return back to college that fall. And I did that for three semesters. Then they didn't offer any of the classes I needed during summer. So, at some point I just decided, school, I can put school on hold. So I never graduated. But, I was like, snowboarding's not going to wait for me. And I'm going to chase that down and see where it leads.
So before we talk a little bit about how that evolved, which a lot of us know, can you, for folks who weren't either alive, the youngsters, or for folks who are less familiar with what snowboarding was like back then, can you talk about, what the scene was like? What was your crew like? I mean, half pipes. It's interesting because you can barely find a half pipe anymore. They used to be on every major mountain, and I remember in the mid '90s when I would go on ski vacations with my folks. We went to Sun Valley and we couldn't even ride. So can you set the stage for folks? At that time, what was snowboarding like?
No, so anyone that snowboarded on the mountain, because there were so few of us, we would gravitate toward each other. And if we didn't know them, we would yell, hey, like, yeah, Schroeder. And we'd go up and meet them and ask where they're from. And we'd be instant best friends. And so we just became like a little snowboard gang wherever we went. And so we'd always meet at the snowboard shop in town. And we'd see, we just all meet up on the mountain and ride together and then meet at the snowboard shop and open up the snowboard magazines, which were always shrink wrapped in plastic. So that was like the big event. Every month we'd get the new mag. The magazine would show up in the snowboard shop and just rip open the cellophane or whatever and read the magazine together and just pick it apart and go through style. And those were our heroes, Jeff Brushy, Craig Kelly, Sean Palmer. Those guys were all in the magazines. And then we'd practice on our trampoline every afternoon and try our grabs. We'd have to duct tape the edges so we didn't rip the trampoline mats. And then we'd practice all the grabs we saw in the magazine and tweak it out. And that was super fun. And then, I didn't have a half pipe. We didn't have a half pipe on Steamboat Mountain at that time. And so I would go to contests and they would have this little mini ditch, it would be 5 feet tall at that time. And there would be what you call highways. So each takeoff, there wasn't any vert on the half pipe, so all the riders would start to go off on one the same track, and then eventually we'd actually take a shovel and create a pathway, a board's width, and that would angle just in the perfect trajectory to come back in the pipe because it wasn't vert, so you're not going straight up and down, so you had to carve it this way. And so there would be all these highway hits. That's what we call them. So it'd be highway, and you put those runs together. So it was so fun. So I would just practice on my home mountain on the side hits, or a mogul. That's how I learned my first 540 trick. I'd just go up on a bank and I would try a trick, and then I'd go to the contest and I'd practice my trick before the contest, and hopefully I'd land it. That's how I learned tricks back then.
That's so wild to hear because nowadays kids are getting groomed from such a young age, going to these academies and, with the dopest gear and great coaching. And you were literally carving out your own path.
We're literally carving our own highway hits. And then, a big thing was to get photos. So once I became pro, I was sponsored and then I became pro. And then you're just doing photo shoots and trying to get in the magazines. And that's how you get media exposure. That's how you become a pro and have a career. You get exposure in the magazines or you win contests. And back in when I competed in the 90s, racing was a big thing. And then Craig Kelly came along. Craig Kelly was winning half pipe events. And he was kind of integral of pushing for freestyle snowboarding. So all of our tricks came from skateboarding. And then, Craig Kelly talked to Jake Burton because Craig Kelly, his sponsor was Sims. Then he switched to Burton, and he talked to Jake Burton Carpenter, owner of Burton Snowboards at that time. He passed away a few years ago, but anyway, so Craig and Jake had a conversation, and Craig's like, snowboarding's going the way of freestyle. So just forget about racing. And Jake kind of fought with him on that. He's like, no, racing's like the big thing, and racing's going to be the future. And Craig Kelly's like, no, it's not. So Jake trusted Craig, and just kind of went all in on the freestyle team and product, and it was all about photos and style and getting photos in the magazine. So, when I became pro, like, you'd work with the photographer, and you'd go off little jumps, and everything was like not everything, but a lot of shots were like close up to just show the style. A lot of the riders would kind of look in the camera, and you'll see some old shots like Jeff Brushy just like looking in the camera.
So much attitude in the shot. Yeah.
So much everything was about attitude. And so you're asking also what was the culture like? There's a lot of attitude. And it was like this kind of young, youthful, rebellious kind of sport, because you had the professional Craig Kelly. He could get interviews. He's an intelligent guy. He could kind of break things down, but he was like kind of the groovy guy. And then there was like the Sean Palmer type that was just fully aggro, like, F-bombs and full-on punk rock attitude. You could see photos of him dressed in an all-American suit with like red hair, just full attitude. And then I got the front row seat to, I call them like the bad boys of snowboarding, because I met my friend Tina Bassich in 1990, and she invited me on all these snowboard trips. And her crew, her boyfriend at that time was Andy Hetzel, and then he was hanging out with like all the bad boys, what I call the bad boys.
So the fun boys.
Yeah, they're fine in the magazines, and then the reality was just pretty gnarly. Like, I've written about this, but like, I stayed with them, and in come like these guys totally back from the bar, totally wasted. Next thing I know, there's like furniture flying past my face because they didn't know I was in the room sleeping. I'm like getting, sleeping. There's a contact test the next morning, and there's just like furniture flying in front of me, and they just thrashed the whole house. Like, there's $3,000 worth of damage. The walls are all like have holes in them. Everything's completely torn up. And I was like, okay. That's kind of what the industry was like. And, but it was exciting too. I was young, and I was like, dude, this is gnarly. And so I got to kind of be like a fly in the wall for that, scenario, I guess.
Yeah, like I remember early films. God, I used to love the films. Like that was, premiere season and watching the films, magazines, like that stuff doesn't barely exist anymore. But there's new ways to experience snowboarding. But I remember the films, like half of it wasn't even riding. It was like just debauchery and like, partying and things burning. I feel like, I don't know.
Oh yeah. Everything burning, thrashing, just going nuts as like full raging 20-year-old boy. It's like 20-year-old boy dream.
So okay, so the boys are partying, burning things down, throwing furniture. Now at that time, I think you probably expected me to ask a little bit about, women in the industry. Things have changed so much, and I think I speak for all female snowboarders when I thank you and so many others for helping set the stage and pioneering for the rest of us. Because, I know when I started, when I got into snowboarding in the mid 90s, and I was tiny, and there was no women's fit clothing. I was riding, I think I had like a 164 K2 Fat Bob, my brother's board that I was handing down that I learned to ride on. Yes, I was
Well,
wearing like
like,
a starter jacket, you know, how what was it like being a woman at that time? Were you just, I remember though at that time I was just stoked to be like my brother and all the guys in the films and stuff, so I didn't care.
yeah,
But what was it like for you? Were you guys just all just snowboarders and, you didn't really
yeah, we
see?
were just all snowboarders, especially when I first started in my hometown. Like I was saying, we just meet at the snowboard shop. There was a group of guys. It was like my best friend and I, and just a few other girls, a handful of girls. And every year there'd become like more girls, and then we'd have like a little girl posse. But we didn't care. We didn't even think of anything. I mean, we started with like ski clothes, so we just wore what we already had growing up in Colorado. Just had outerwear stuff. We didn't kind of care. And then when snowboard outerwear came out on the scene, it was just, and I was sponsored. There were only like size large samples to wear, so I just wear large samples, roll up the waistband, roll up the bottoms, and now that's like the full style. It's kind of funny, like the bigger the better, the baggier. But back then, we were just like swimming. We were like girls swimming in these guys' clothing. We were like little kids, in this oversized gear, and there weren't any boards for girls or smaller sizes. I mean, there were a few, but it definitely wasn't specific girls in the graphics. Like for example, like I wrote a Sims kids board. It was Sean Palmer's pro model, what was called the mini Palmer. So it was Sean Palmer's pro model, but mini for kids. But I don't know what parent would want their kid writing this graphic, because it was like, it was like a cartoon of a Cadillac with Palmer as the pimp and then his hoe, like like the boobs popping out of the lingerie. So, but if you're gonna give me free product and I get to travel the world, I I could care less, because this was amazing. I never even expected to have a snowboard career at that point. I didn't even think snowboarding could be a career. So that when I started to get paid, it was like, whatever gets me to do this, I kind of didn't care. But then, the marketing director at Sim Snowboards, that was my second sponsor. First, I rode for Moro Snowboards, and then I rode for Sims, just because a lot of different circumstances why I changed. But anyway, the marketing director was female, and her name was Galen Nagel. And she's like, I think the industry is ready for a woman specific pro model, and you're the one to do it. I had just won a world champion. I was the world champion. And at that time, that was kind of the big set of events. You go to the World Cup, and if you're world champ, you're kind of like, okay, so everyone strive to be a world champ in the half pipe. And then I also won, the U.S. Open, which at that time was the biggest event in snowboarding. Yeah. So she's like, I think the industry is ready for a women's pro model.
Was the market ready?
They didn't think they were ready, but they were ready. Because in the end, my pro model sold more than any other board in the Sims line at that time, more than Sean Palmer's pro model, more than Noah Slazik's pro model. So it just blew the doors, and it really opened the industry to create women's product. They knew it was going to sell. It was proof. So it was pretty cool. But, to get it to market was a big problem. A lot of challenges. The reps were saying, we're not going to sell it. The shop said, we're not going to carry it. And so Galen said, hey, we'll just put it on consignment. Even the people at Sims were like, we're not going to build a new mold. too expensive, and what if it doesn't sell enough? We're out a lot of cash. So Galen put up, she offered her own money if the boards didn't sell, she would repay them for that mold. First, she really put herself on the line, and then she talked to the shops and said, I'll take these boards back if they don't sell. You can put them in your shop on consignment. And then she seeded like 100 boards just to get them on the market. And so she did a lot of behind the scenes work, but it really changed the whole, it just created a women's market, because I don't know how long it would have been until somebody took the risk, to put that out. And it was Sims and Burton were like the two biggest snowboard brands at that time. So we kind of just proved that a woman's product would sell. And then my graphic was kind of dismissed too, because I drew my own graphic. It was a bright red background with two really bright, huge sunflowers, and sunflowers were like totally trending at that time. And so we just kind of hit all those key pieces of, I think the graphics were perfect. The size was good for a lot of women. It was new. I was at the height of I had more height of my career after that, but I was like the new emerging pro girl, with a lot of energy behind me. I was winning all the major events. So all those pieces came together at the perfect time, and we just kind of blew open the doors for women's product. And after that, it was just like women's everything came out. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
What did the guys think about it, and what did the industry think about that? Because I remember even back in the early 2000s when I was working at Evo, and, we would be, and they were super supportive of women and Bryce and the buyers and even, all of our reps. But like, I saw the numbers, and I saw, it was like pushing a boulder uphill, even though we supported it. Just like it was tough, and it was kind of nerve-wracking to invest extra and to be that, trailblazer for women, along the way. So God, it's wild to think that it was Galen and, Sims was willing to, take that risk, that she in particular was willing to put up her own money. That is huge. I think I want to give this woman a big fat hug. Oh my gosh.
She's incredible. And talk about tenacious and feisty. That's the personality of Galen. But she had also she'd seen other sports. She just had she had her finger on the pulse of the sport, especially for women. She was a woman, and her best friend was Lisa Vincent-Guerra, and she could see the mistakes they made, and she really felt like it was the time. And I didn't really think much of it. I was just like, okay, I'm like, here, just moving along in my career. Doors are opening. I'm winning contests. I'm just having all these opportunities, and I'm not even understanding the significance of this all. I'm just like, this is awesome. I'm like, snowboarding you're getting so much.
You're getting sent all over the world. You're competing. You're at the top of your game. You have a pro model now, and so you must be making a living wage. What was it like, because the industry has gone through these ebbs and flows of, being full of money and, and recession, post-recession. Then, there used to be a lot of money in the industry. I remember I was talking to Brad and I talked to Donna a little bit, and I had Priscilla Levesque on the line not too long ago, and she's like, "Oh man, that late 90s, early 2000s was."
Well, I'll say, because let's say 1990, not let's say, but 1990 was the start of my career, and now that pro model came out in 1994, so that's 4 years, and so I went from like no money, my parents are doing whatever they can to make it work for me to compete. And then I got a just incentive-based contract with Morrow Snowboards, who was that was the start of Morrow. And so Brad Stewart was instrumental in getting Morrow started with Rob Morrow. Anyway, so when Brad Stewart left Morrow, and then he went on to start his own company, Bonfire Outerwear. When he left the company, then I left the company because I just, just for different reasons, I just felt like, well, I should see what other opportunities I have. And then my dad helped get my contract going with Sims, but that was so minimal. I think they paid $5,000 and then a pretty good incentive package with that. And then when Galen came around, then I re-signed for royalties. When I think royalties were $10 a board or something. But so they ended up, selling like hotcakes. But then they weren't paying me my salary. They weren't paying any royalties, and they weren't even paying my salary. So I called Galen. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I'm having trouble getting paid. And so she's talking to the accounting and all this stuff. Well, internally, there was a lot going on with the company. I think at that time, they were about to sell to another company or something. Well, they weren't paying me. And at the same time, Burton, the Burton team manager, asked if I would ride for Burton. And I was totally blowing him off because I was like, dude, I just I have a pro model and it's selling a lot. So thank you. I'm so honored that you asked me, but I can't just bail on this company. I can't do that. He's like, well, think about it. We can deal with any contracts you've already signed, whatever. Don't worry about it. And that's when I met my then boyfriend, Dave, not my husband, and he was connected with Burton. So he kind of was like, you got to get on Burton. At that moment, Sims isn't paying me. Now I'm like, maybe I'll just entertain Burton's offer. And Galen's really pulling for me. But in the company, she's telling them, you're going to lose Shannon. She's talking with Burton because I was very open with Galen. I'm like, here's this opportunity. They're not paying me. What is happening right now? And she's telling the company at Sims, you're going to lose Shannon because you're not paying her. Get back to her. She's doing all she can, but she's in marketing. The finance guys are just not talking to me. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to entertain Burton's offer. I'm going to go fly out there and entertain their deal. And right before, so I made a ticket. I'm like, I'm going to entertain what you guys have to offer. And I'm telling Sims this. And next thing I know, I get a call from Thompson's wife. And I had only met Thompson a few times. Never had I talked with his wife or anything. And she's like, Tom's about to Tom had a heart attack when he heard you might be leaving the Burton. And I'm like, he had a heart attack? Oh my gosh. I'm thinking he's hooked up to tubes in the hospital, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is he okay? And I'm like, oh my gosh, now Tom Simpson is in the hospital with a heart attack because of me. She's like, no, not for real. He's not really having a heart attack. But anyway, so she's trying to talk me out of going to Burton and talking with Burton. And I'm like, and I kind of got really upset. And I, just you can't just call me now that you heard that I'm possibly leaving to Burton. All you have to do is, pay me my monthly amount, send me a check because it's part of my contract, just be good on your end. Anyway, so it was a big thing. And I was like, I don't like that you're talking on behalf of Tom either.
Yeah, why is he talking to you?
Yeah, Tom, have him call me. It's so this is second strikeout. I'm like, I feel like you're manipulating this conversation to make me feel bad. And this is business. And if you guys aren't doing good business, then I'm going to just entertain my offers, So I just decided to stick with going to Burton. And then that's comes to another story of negotiating. But okay, you're talking about money. It wasn't until I rode for Burton where I was getting paid legit money. And that was 1994. And so I'd say from 1994 on, those were like the booming years of financially for snowboarding. Yeah, for a
So
lot of people.
and so that you not only did your career got back on track, or you doubled down for your career, you advocated for yourself and didn't let somebody gaslight you.
Yeah.
That's
I didn't
wild.
have an agent. We didn't have an agent.
Yeah.
I think two people or something like that had agents, and I just felt like agents at that time were slime balls, and I was like, I'm just going to talk for myself. So I did.
And you grabbed the bull by the horns, and you also met your husband.
Yeah, my husband before Burton, and he was a Burton rep. He was like a pro surfer. Then he wasn't doing that well surfing, so he was working at like a surf shop in Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach. And then he was also like a Burton rep. And then we met on this trip in Italy. And on that trip was Eric Koch, who was the Burton team manager. And so from that trip, we all just kind of like all bonded. I mean, it was like Tina Bassage and just this group of, we were all just kind of in the same place in our new careers, Anyway, so Dave's like, you got to get on a Burton product. Burton's so much better, blah, blah, blah. And so he and Eric talked, and my pro model came out. They wanted me to have a women's pro model, Burton did, because they were kind of missing that. They were bummed that they weren't the first women's pro model, or they didn't put that out first. They were like, oh, we're kind of missing the boat on that. So they asked me to be on their team, but then negotiating when I flew out there, it was tough. Like Burton had a head of marketing that was just the relentless negotiator, and he came from like a corporate background. I think he was like corporate McDonald's, and I was warned that he was going to be a gnarly negotiator. He was going to be gnarly as I was negotiating my contract, but I was like, whatever, I'm in the better position. They want me. And I went in there and it was just so intimidating. I mean, and he was just lowballing me. He's like, I can offer you, like $5,000. I'm like, I didn't fly all the way out here for a $5,000 contract. And he was like, well, it's kind of late in the season, you already missed like one full year, because as a pro snowboarder, you have to take photos on all your product the year before. And so all the product I was on that whole winter was going to come out the following season. So I basically am missing one whole year of promoting Burton. So he kind of used that against me, and I was like, no. And so we spent hours trying to, negotiate. And by like the second hour, or however long that was, I was like, we're done. Like, you're not offering me anything I want to stay for. Like, you're not offering me any contract that's worth anything here. And I was just like, I don't even know why you flew me out here. Because before I went into their office, we flew to like New York, and we went to like Saturday Night Live, and they're just totally schmoozing me. And then I get to the office to negotiate, and it's just like, wah, wah, wah. And I was just so bogged. Like, I was like, this what the heck? And I was, after that day, I like walked out of the office. I was like, this is not happening. And like, if you want to get serious, let me know. And he's like, well, you can't leave. And I'm like, well, I'm not staying. And he's like, um, well, we'll keep on talking. And I'm like, if you can't offer me something substantial, like here and now, we're done. And I left. And Eric Koch, the team manager, is like, I'm like, what the hell, Eric? Like, I fly all the way out here, and it comes down to this, and he's not even willing to like offer me anything real. Like, you think the guys, the tough guys on the Burton team are getting this? No. Like, what the hell? Like, he was so bummed. And when I heard Eric, the team manager, talking with the VP of marketing, like, the VP was like, you got to keep her. You cannot let her go home until we have her sign this contract. Like, I overheard that. And I was just like, dude, you're not holding me hostage here. Because he's like, you got to stay. And I'm like, I am not staying. It's now or never. I have an hour to get to my flight. You're driving me to the airport right now. And anyway, Eric ended up, there's so many like pieces that I'm trying to skip over. But anyway, Eric's like, I got to go home real quick before I take you to the airport. Just come in, you could call Dave. I was like, I want to call my parents. I want to call Dave. And I just broke down crying. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Especially with everything that happened with Sims and Tom Sims' wife calling me and all these things, it was so emotional because I wasn't used to like negotiating on this kind of a level or even having snowboarding as a career at this intensive kind of a level. Everything prior to that moment was like a handshake, like honest handshake, deal, handshake. We're going to follow through and everything's going to work out, like more of a friend level. But now this was like my first taste of professional kind of athletics and the way you think of, big sports now and what snowboarding is now. Everything's like contract and my dad and my parents have, and my mom too, they've always just been like, listen, this is a business. This is not a handshake kind of deal. And I was always like poo-pooing them. Oh, mom, oh, dad, you don't know snowboarding. Snowboarding totally is like this. They're all of our friends. And they're like, always taught me they're not your friends. You can be friends with them, but this is a business and you need to treat it that way. So they've always kind of instilled in me that to take snowboarding on a professional level and don't get so emotionally tied. So a lot of learning curves, a lot of learning for me in that way of on the business end. I ended up staying the night in Vermont. And I was so stubborn. I was like, I am not, like, drive me to the airport. I was so mad and sad. But both my parents and Dave kind of talked me off the cliff. They were like, just, what's it going to hurt? Just stay. See what Burton's going to offer and just be a hardball. Just negotiate. You know what you're worth. You know that they kind of need you in a sense. Like, otherwise they would have their other riders take on this women's pro model. They want you. And so I just went back in the office and we negotiated a really great contract and I almost walked away before I signed. And then the guy, DJ, was, he gave me a serious offer when I was about to walk away the second time. And I go, okay, now he wrote a number. He kept writing like a number on a piece of paper and and then we were pushing it to me. That's how we were like negotiating our dollars. And, I was never going to give him the first number. That's what my parents taught me, like never give the first number in negotiation. So I was just not offering him any number, but all the numbers he was offering me, I was like, no, too low, too low, too low. And then he put something in front of me that was, okay, now we're talking. And I go, that's still too low. And he was like, well, what are you looking for? And then I like doubled the number I was thinking. I came in just ridiculous high. And then he's like, oh, I can't do that, but I can give you like, he met me in the middle. And that was a really great number to me. And I know, I have a feeling it was still lower than those other guys. But I didn't know, and it was above what I had expected. And so we came to an agreement, and that was, I was able to design, Burton's first women's pro model. That was a dolphin board. And that was an incredible board. Burton's incredible. Like their R&D, research and development, their products, they're really incredible for their product development and stuff. So it was a really cool process working with them to design a board. They reissued that dolphin board in 2023.
No
so
way.
I get to, they did a limited run of like a small run for people to buy those boards. So I can ride that board now, and I ride it a lot. It's a really awesome board still.
Wow, kudos to you, and thank you again. I'll probably be thanking you, I don't know, a million times in this conversation, because I mean, you really did pave the way for other for women in snowboarding. That pro model, especially because Burton was such a driving force at that time. A lot of others, they set the tone for the industry, so it probably pushed other brands to start producing more women specific products. And also being, the fact, even though it was difficult, they negotiated with you, they showed up, and they met the challenge. So thank you, and kudos to Burton. Thank you. I mean, people want to call Burton the sellout, and no company's perfect, and but the fact that they were able to support you, and still do today, is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is funny. It's funny. Well, I'm thinking back to when I had a Burton board before I was sponsored by Burton, and I was riding with Jeff Anderson. He was like this little kid. I don't know if anyone doesn't know Jeff Anderson. He became a Burton team rider, and then he passed away years ago. But he was an awesome person. Anyway, I met him when he was really little, and we were at June Mountain. He's from Mammoth, him and his brother Billy. And I actually taught him I didn't really teach him, but Jeffy Anderson was like, how do you drop into the half pipe? I'm so scared. And I'm like, it's so easy. Don't worry about it. You just do this, this, and this. And then he dropped it in, and that was super sweet. But I remember we were talking about Burton, and you're hurting on a Burton. And so I changed the B to an H. You're hurting on a Burton, But you know what? Like, Burton is the most family-run business. And once people get to know Burton and really how they work and stuff, it's actually super cool. It's just, if people don't know, they give Burton a hard time and think they're all corporate, but it's so the opposite. And people just don't know. You just gotta kind of know. And I think it's to a fault of Burton. They're not like really promoting what it's like internally. I think they should, because I think people would really have a different perspective about Burton. Yeah.
Different strokes for different folks, and I think in any healthy industry has competition and variety. And so it's, might not be for everyone, but I have mad respect for what they've done to grow and support this industry and women in particular. I think I met you through their women's initiative, the Burton Girls program that they had eons ago. And, I no shade, everybody's doing their own thing, and, I think there's space for all of it.
Big for everything, for sure. Yep. A lot of cool stuff, I think, happening in snowboarding too, I think. definitely the more competition, the better.
But okay, so you're riding for Burton now, and you're getting paid, you're competing. Let's talk about the Olympics. So you were saying that when you were a kid, even before snowboarding, you were in an Olympics family and you dreamt of going to the Olympics. Talk about what it meant to you leading up to Olympics and being there. Was it surreal?
Yeah, it was definitely surreal to be at the Olympics because, there was no pathway to the Olympics when I started. So to be there was like, it was crazy. We just all kind of felt like we shouldn't really be at the Olympics, with all these Olympians who train and stuff. And, none of us had coaches at that time and stuff like that. So it was awesome. Like the opening ceremonies was so cool because, growing up watching the opening ceremonies, it's like, this is so cool. All these athletes and from other countries and, just being part of the U.S. Olympic team was super cool. Japan is awesome. I love Japan. That's where the first snowboard Olympics was, Nagano. I also went to the 2002 Olympics and then I retired right after that. But, and that was sort of like a pass the baton to Kelly Clark kind of feeling. Kelly Clark won that. She was a gold medalist. And, she came up behind me in the half pipe. So that was cool to see. From that moment on, she just took her career to a crazy level into snowboarding. Snowboarding became the next level sport as well. But yeah, it was funny because leading into the Olympics, the big phrase was like, "Oh, you're a sellout if you go to the Olympics,"
Yeah.
because we were kind of thought of as like kind of this hardcore sport, much like skateboarding had been before skateboarding went to the Olympics. Terrier was the top snowboarder in the world, in the universe, and he boycotted the Olympics because it was just so political, he thought. And, FIS, the Federation of International Ski, was in charge and running snowboarding. So it's like, are the Olympics just capitalizing on this new emerging sport and to make money?
Yeah.
And so we all that was kind of like the whole snowboarding culture at that time. I was just like, Olympics, whatever. So dumb. But of course, we all wanted to make the Olympics, and go for it. And I just decided, yeah, I'm gonna at least try. I mean, I've already put the effort and the time into like being a rider representative to like the International Snowboard Federation. A lot of snowboarders were not being an active voice, to make a difference in like who's going to oversee snowboarding competitions. So I was like, I did my very best to try and get like snowboarders representing snowboarding. And, a lot of people that are complaining about the Olympics being run by this never were trying to get snowboarding to be their own voice. So I felt like I did my very best to try and get snowboarders representing snowboarding. It's really hard to do that. It's really hard to get snowboarders at that time to represent themselves because nobody wanted to get together to do that because we're just like this alternative sport and we don't want to be like the typical sport getting together and all that. So I was just like, if I can make it, I'm just going to go see what it's like. I'll let you guys all know what it's like. And I got to go. I got a medal. I got the bronze and I had a great time.
Yeah, man. Okay. So Japan is known for its epic POW, and I swear everybody disappears from, or actually appears in my social feed January, February because of Ren POW in Japan. Now, did you at that time, were you Ren POW, did you sneak away ever, or was it a thing?
It actually rained during the Olympics, so there was no POW. It was really a warm winter.
Oh no.
I love Japan, and Japan POW is epic. It's the best. It's still the best. But just to go to Japan, and we'd go every twice a year, and we'd go for a promo tour in the fall, and the winter they had a Japanese Open, and it's just the coolest. And you start to have like fans follow you, like they come to every event in Japan every year. And
Wow.
so when, during the Olympics, you'd see these like Japanese fans that followed the Burton team for a couple of years, and when we know them by name, and it was just so fun. It just felt so fun, and just crazy, and it was stressful. A lot of the country's teams were getting sick, like a lot of sick competitors. It was super high stress. You could feel it, like nothing we'd ever felt in snowboarding. And I was just really trying to chill and like really take everything in. That was like my goal. My goal was to win, and my goal was to have fun, and my goal was to like soak in the entire experience. So I had that, like those three things kind of like rotating in my head the entire trip. Like, I want to have fun. I got to take this serious. I want to win. Well. So to do that all together, I feel like I accomplished everything. I didn't win, but I did pull off the best run of my life. It was pouring rain. Yeah. So it wasn't something that I knew how to control or anything, or even considered. So then at that point, I was just like, oh, wow, I'm stoked I got third. I got podium, and, my whole thing in a moment, in a flicker of an eye, I changed my mental mindset. And I was like, when I'm 90 as a grandma, I'm going to be like, this is the best thing of my life. This is so cool. What a great experience.
Hey, you gave, so many little girls something, to aspire to. And, you were living the dream. You were living my dream. I thought I was going to go to the Nagano Olympics one day when I was a kid. And,
Oh.
yeah, I think you definitely were an inspiration for so many. And I can only imagine that you've had the opportunity for so many girls to tell you that. So thank you again. Like I said, I'll tell you thank you a million times. So you're at the height of your career, and I'd love to just hear a little bit about where, so where does it go from there? Did you check all those boxes? You're starting to think about, transitioning towards a different lifestyle and figuring out how to be more available to have a family. Like, how do you go from being a celebrity, and literally like one of few people in the world to sit on top of a podium at the Olympics? What was it like for transition, outside of the limelight?
I mean, snowboarding you weren't a celebrity at that time because the media didn't really cover snowboarding at the Olympics. I did a little bit after. I think if I were to win a gold medal, that'd be a whole different story in America. Not sure what, the other country perspective on snowboarding was, but in the US, it was still like this rebellious sport, and they were still afraid to cover it. So it just, life went on as always in the snowboard world after the first snowboard Olympics. And, I think it put a fire in me just to keep going and to keep progressing and keep, setting goals to like, my goal was to always just promote women's snowboarding and grow more participation. That was just a personal thing I wanted to achieve. And, Burton was a big part of that. They were really into whatever ideas, I had. And, so yeah, just kind of my career continued on and snowboarded, had fun, loved what I do. I love snowboarding.
Talk a little bit about uh, boarding for breast cancer for folks who don't know what that is. You are the co-founder of one of the coolest organizations in snowboarding, if you ask me.
No, thanks. Yeah, boarding for breast cancer. We started that in 1996. And we promote breast cancer awareness, especially to younger people. We now provide survivor retreats, and we promote like a healthy and active lifestyle, the best means of breast cancer prevention. And the reason we started that was because of our friend Monica Stewart. She was 26 years old, and she didn't know she had breast cancer until it was too late. But being so young, the doctor dismissed her symptoms. And by the time she found out, she had a late stage breast cancer. But we in the industry, women in the industry were few, and we were a tight group. So we all wanted to support Monica. And the best way we could do that, she said, was to create awareness, because she wasn't finding that much information about breast cancer. And at that time, it was known as like your grandmother's disease. And this was before the internet. So the information was kind of hard to find for her. She'd have to look up magazine articles and things like that. So we just came alongside her and decided to start our first Boarding for Breast Cancer snowboard music festival. That was here at Tahoe in 1996. So we're coming up on 30 years. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary here at Tahoe this year, 2026. So that's pretty amazing. But the entire industry got behind our rally, including the Beastie Boys. They played the event under the name Quasar. We had the epic house party. They wanted to practice, and Tina Bassett, who is also a co-founder, was Adam Yauch actually was roommates with Tina Bassett because he was like a big snowboarder. And Tina met him just super randomly in Australia one year, and he was like, "I'm looking for a place to stay, or like somewhere, some mountain resort, because we're off tour, and I love snowboarding." He was in Australia snowboarding by himself, and Tina was riding with him, and she's like, "Well, you can rent a room at my house for $400." And so he ended up living in Utah and riding Utah, and all those guys in Utah just like love him, adored him, and so he was so awesome. But anyway, when he was roommates with Tina at the time when we decided we're gonna do the first Boarding for Breast Cancer event, and he's like, "Yeah, let's talk to my manager." And they ended up playing. They couldn't play under their name, Beastie Boys, but it was epic. It was there's like a crowd of 10,000 it was like word of mouth. And then the entire snowboard industry just came out, rallied, competed, like guys, girls, all the sponsors. We had the sponsor village, and it was just awesome. And we just donated the proceeds that we made to I think it was the American Breast Cancer Association, because we didn't know what to do, and then Lisa Hudson and a couple other women decided to set up a nonprofit. And yeah, it's just a grassroots organization. We just go to resort, and we really just go anywhere a resort wants to host us. And we educate them about what a breast cancer lump feels like. You can touch like a hard lump in a jelly breast mold, and then we give education, shower cards to show how to check your own breast. So it's very simple. And then you can buy merch, and that supports the next stop where we go. So we're not making money. We're not making a bunch of money. We're just basically making money for the next stop and the next event to educate people. And then we offer survivor retreats, which is so incredible. Those are really special. I was just on one. We all went capboarding. These women are just so stoked to get together and really get back on snow and be able to talk about what they went through with their other people that have gone through the same, survivor treatments and things like that. They have just rave reviews about these retreats, it just helps their mental, their mind, and they all say, like, we didn't realize we needed that together, cool.
Okay, for anyone who wasn't in snowboarding in the era of boarding for breast cancer events, it was, first of all, at 14 or 15 or even 16, most girls, I at least, didn't really care or wasn't worried about breast cancer, but boarding for breast cancer events made me care. But also, they were the coolest events of the year. I would go to Mount Hood Meadows, Hood. I think you guys had some events down there. And then eventually I was working with them, and I think I got to help a little bit with some of those events. But then seeing in the magazines, like the coverage with like Beastie Boys, and I mean, it was rock and roll. It was a festival, like, and there were so many more. I mean, I think you set the tone for, on mountain fun events and activations and this experiential marketing in general. I don't know if people realize that it was so much more. For me, it was kind of like all of my snowboarding friends, we would get together and go to that. And it was kind of like a reunion in a way every year to do, to go celebrate, breast cancer awareness. It was cool.
I mean, we know how to have fun. So that's what we did. We're just like, let's just create awareness, but we want to bring joy in life and have fun. That's all we know how to do. So let's just do that. And then with it, we're going to, like, people can feel what a cancerous breast lump feels like. But we're all about, that's it.
Yeah.
And so people have come, to our booth and said, like, I felt like this cancerous lump, then I felt my own, and I found it and detected it early, and I got it taken out, and no big deal. So it's just very simple. But not many people are doing that. Like, you can't, nobody is, I don't want to say nobody, but like not many people are showing what a cancerous lump feels like. But everyone's saying, like, check your breath, but you're like, what do I check for? So it's just like a hands-on thing that's super simple, but makes a big, big impact and big difference. And now with these retreats, those are also making a big impact.
I would have guy friends come too, and they'd be like, I mean, they were interested and would interact, and it's a special thing, and you guys created a really incredible organization and made some, I'm sure you have saved lives, or at least help, improve lives, no doubt.
That's cool.
Okay.
So that's like, Tina Bassett, Lisa Hudson, Megan Pischke is part of that survivor retreat. So cool group.
Oh yeah. Cool. Can you who are the other co-founders of Boarding for Breast Cancer?
Tina Bassett, Lisa Hudson, and then a couple other women who are no longer involved. And then now Megan Pischke is in charge of the survivor retreat. She had breast cancer herself, so she knows what that feels like. So she really speaks to those women. While Maggie Gonzalez is our event coordinator. Yeah, definitely. If you want to get involved in Boarding for Breast Cancer, you can volunteer at any of our events. We love volunteers. You can spend any amount of time, an hour, all day, all weekend. Go to our website, www.b4bc.org. You can check out our Instagram, b4bc on Instagram, and message us. We'll get back to you. Check out our events. If you want to just attend them, come and be a part of it and just see what we're all about. And if you want to volunteer, we are always loving volunteers at any events. Yeah, it's really awesome. Or you can donate. Okay, so while we're talking about the ladies, and we've been talking a lot about you,
But I'd love to hear just your perspective on where women's snowboarding is right now, and who are you stoked to watch? I mean, who should we check out? Who's crushing it right now?
Well, women's snowboarding is incredible. And I have to say, I think everyone wants to watch the women snowboarding, like at the X Games or the Olympics. It's like the favorite to watch are the women because we can kind of more understand what they're doing. The men are just spinning at these crazy rotations. Um, and the women are so cool. Like, I just watched Natural Selection. Zoe Sadowski is just the amazing ripper at any kind of terrain. And then isn't she so cool? She's just like so nice and like, oh yeah, I'm just so happy to be here. And then she just does these incredible feats on a snowboard.
I love to see how women are supporting each other and creating these film projects. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, you were featured in the Wayward Film Project. Can you talk a little bit about that for folks who haven't heard of that?
Yeah, Wayward is I wasn't involved in the production or anything, but they interviewed me, and it's a movie about women's progression, from our day and till now. And so it just really highlights our stories and personalities and what we've been through through the different years and generations so far, because snowboarding is such a new sport. So it's pretty cool to hear the girls' stories, I think. Yeah. But oh my gosh, it's just crazy. Oh, I just, just the girls like Mia Brooks and Zoe Sadowski, and then Kokomo, and the Japanese and the Koreans, and oh gosh, Gaeon, the Choi, I forget her last name. The Korean that won the half pipe event. Did you watch that?
Oh my God, yeah, and also brave of you to pronounce all these last names. I can't pronounce
I don't know if I did that. I hadn't even heard of her. And then did you see her crash? She crashed like I didn't even think I thought she was going to get stretchered out from the Olympics in the half pipe. And then here she comes riding for second and third run and won. So I was like, whoa, these girls are next level. It's pretty death defying what they're doing. Now I'm getting to see like from us a younger age, like my friend's daughter is 14. So I'm kind of helping her when I can. Not even helping her because I can't help. I don't even know how to do or coach or anything. I don't even know how to do any of these tricks. I'm just there more for support. It's just really difficult what they're doing at a young age. She's 14. She's flying off these 60 to 80 foot jumps, and you're spinning, and it's the first time she's ever done jumps this big. I mean, she's also training on airbags and in gymnastics and things like that, but still, it takes guts. It's hard, especially as a teenage girl. It's like you have hormones to deal with. I mean, if you want to talk girl, you're like, I don't even want to say this because she'd be so embarrassed, but girls in general, 14, okay, you get your period, you're going through emotions, you're dealing with I like boys or whatever, your hormones, and then you're flying off 80-foot jumps. It's a lot.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, to be a girl, it's a little bit challenging.
The one thing, I don't know, when I was younger and my knees were a lot more resilient, I think being on the snow is the one thing that just made sense of everything else going on in life, right? So
that's true.
They're like, oh,
yeah. Maybe it is.
Where do you think snowboarding's going? And what do you have hope for women in the industry? I still think there is a pretty big divide. That goes for all women's sports, I think. But I do see the youngsters, bringing in this new energy, and it's really, really cool. And I think it's women in snowboarding that are actually bringing the new and cool energy.
Yeah, especially
if you've heard of the Uninvited, that
Mm.
event from Jess Kimura is amazing. And
Oh yeah.
it's just bringing a lot of energy, money, a lot of opportunities for girls. I think girls just need to be creative and never stop. I think these pros have to think outside the box and don't
Mhm.
settle for what's already out there. Just always be thinking, like,
Mhm.
how can I capitalize? How can I create a career in a different way? Like, Jess Kimura, just she had a vision
Crushed it.
and it's
Yes.
working. And so never,
Mhm.
don't just settle in, because as girls, I feel like there's opportunity. It can be fun instead of like, oh, we don't get enough, or, instead of like the victim mentality, just go create something that's not even there, um, because you can. And I think that makes life fun, and you're going to be pioneering new terrain. You can do that in any part of your life. Like, we're never victims. I hate when, people just settle in and just complain about there isn't enough. There's not enough for a lot of things in life, for a lot of people, a lot of groups, a lot of things in any situation. And so don't ever be a victim, and just go create and just enjoy your life and create opportunities for other people instead of expecting it to be done for you, I think.
That is beautiful. Oh man, thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's like women because it didn't exist for us, and there wasn't necessarily a mold. I look at what Jess has created and some other projects that are out there. It's like, well, okay, well, I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
and there's no expectation for it, so here we go.
Yeah. And what
That's
hype? And
rad.
I know, I mean, I sat on the lift with Jess Kimura like during the It's Tits. Do you remember that event? It was called It's
Yeah, yeah.
Tits. And she was a part of that. And I remember she wasn't complaining, she wasn't bummed on that event at all. But it was the first time I met Jess Kimura, because I had been out of the industry for so long. And I know she was just kind of bummed about like like there's just not that much stuff like for girls right now, and it was hard to kind of, I don't know if it was hard to get sponsors. I don't exactly know the depths of what she was kind of struggling with or having difficulties with, but I just remember, I don't know if I don't think anything I said, this isn't about what I said to her or anything, but just to see her now being so successful. I think the point is, I think, sorry to
Mhm.
go back. I think I did say,
Yeah.
you can create whatever you want to in this, and
Mhm.
it's up to you to make it happen. But probably that didn't make any difference in her, because she's got so many ideas and tenacity and all that. But anyway, look what she's doing now. She overcame a lot of hurdles, I know, to
Yeah.
create the Uninvited, but it's just going off, and I'm so stoked for everyone involved. It's really cool.
I think the point at which I realized that everything I thought I knew about the world and my expectations for me and what I was supposed to be doing, and when I broke those down and started living from my own heart and kind of just living life in the way that I wanted it to, living it with intention for myself and not for anybody else. That's where I started to see success, or started to at least find more joy in my work and my trajectory and all my interactions. And I wish there was something that parents did a better job of really inspiring in their kids. And we talked a little bit more about, as a culture, like really teaching kids, people, adults need this too, to learn how to tap into who they are and really your innate passions, skills, and talents, because I mean,
Yeah,
like it, I mean,
you're
I'm
right.
in my early 40s now and I'm just figuring out and having fun. Life is a blank canvas. And I realize it's up to me to kind of create that path I want, to see for myself.
And
Um,
I
yeah.
think you're so right on. And like, us older people tend to see social media as like a negative. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think it's such a positive. You have your own channel to kind of like, you have your own media channel, and I think there's a lot you could do with the opportunities of technology that you couldn't do before.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to wait for somebody else to take the reins in your own career. You can be creative, and you just have to
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of have like a problem solving mindset too, of how am I going to
Mm-hmm.
achieve this. But you also have, we have access to so much help these days. Like, if you don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to do something, we could, you know ask somebody for help. You can say, hey, I want to achieve this, but I don't know how. And then you can just ask away until you find those answers of how to achieve what you want to do with your passions and your gifts and all of those things. And also bringing other people along with you
Mm-hmm.
to help them, So it can be cool.
That is a great segue, Shannon, because I want to talk a little bit about where you're at now. I want to talk about Shannon today. Now, you recently published a book that I will be honest, I haven't read it yet, but it's in my Amazon cart. And I'm excited to get a copy and to read it because, again, my life would not be remotely what it is today if it wasn't for snowboarding and for individuals like you, not just as a woman in snowboarding, but you're a pioneer for something that my career became based on. But also, if before snowboarding, I didn't have something that I was passionate about and I felt okay at, that I gave me a trajectory. And it gave me a reason to get out of my small town. And so I am excited to read your book, and because that sport, seemingly, pedestrian kind of activity, has meant so much to so many people. And so I thank you, and I'd love to give you a chance to, you've just shared your story, but can you tell us a little bit about the book and what might, tease what might be in it, and how we could get our hands on it.
All right. Well, thanks, Molly. You're just so awesome. Anyway, yeah, the reason I set out to write a book, one, I felt like my story had so many crazy, I just had so many crazy experiences that just sort of, they didn't just fall in my lap because there's certain reasons, but like some things did. So I thought it would be a good challenge, right? And then I noticed that nobody kind of knew, not nobody knew about snowboard history, but a lot of people don't know snowboard history because a lot of what we did in the late 80s, early 90s, predated the internet. And so it got lost. So I wanted to share my experiences as a way to show what the snowboard culture was like as part of that history. I just kind of take you with me, and as a result, you get to see what it was like during that time in snowboarding. A lot of fun stories, I feel like, along the way. And then I wanted to inspire people by, doing things that might just be way out of their comfort zone. And I feel like I was just kind of like almost placed in these situations where I was like, no, we're going to do this a different way. And that was with the help of friends, teammates, family, a lot of people behind me, beside me. It wasn't just myself, but the importance of just persevering through things like, blowing past the boundaries that are there. So those are all the reasons I set out to do that. It was a 5-year project because I wasn't like a writer. But it was a challenge I set before myself. And, once I started, I realized how big of a task it was to write a story on my own. And it was just like editing after editing after editing after editing. And it was like 5 straight years. So that's because I'm not a writer. I'm like sitting down for hours at a time. And I did take a class. So in the first 9 months, like I went through the structure and how I want to write the story on a structural level. And then, you just have to kind of go and edit. And if I did another book, it's not going to take me 5 years, but it was a painstaking process. And I can't say I loved doing it. It was a lot. Like I researched a lot because, I wanted to go back in time and get the dates right and the feelings right, and do my best to do that. I don't know if I got it all right, but I did my best. And it's a very easy read. I think it's a fun read, and it shows what I mentally went through, physically went through, and then what the culture was kind of like and how it kind of grew up alongside me or with me.
I'm excited. I think a lot of folks, any age, could get excited to kind of hear the history of snowboarding through your lens. I've gotten to talk to Brad Stewart and a few other folks on the show that have shared a little peekaboo into their experience. So I can't wait to go in depth with yours. So if that wasn't enough, being a pioneer in snowboarding and writing a book, having children, being a loving wife, and boarding for breast cancer, you also co-founded a company recently, I believe a wellness brand.
Glow and Behold Tallow Lotion. Yeah, glowandbeholdlotion.com. Yeah, it's just, this is a fun passion project. It's a tallow skincare line. And the reason for doing that is just to have like a pure product skincare line for myself. And I just started making tallow lotion with my son's girlfriend and her sisters. I was like, you guys want to make some tallow lotion? Oh yeah, let's all do that. And it just came out so awesome, and it's so hydrating. And then I partnered with my friend who was like, yeah, let's just like be legit and start this line. And so we have 9 products, and it's all organic, small batch tallow. For anybody that doesn't know, tallow is beef fat. We use cosmetic grade, grass-fed and finished beef tallow, because tallow is the closest oil to our skin's natural oils. So it really mimics it and keeps you hydrated. And so we have a whole skincare line now, which is super fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
it's funny. I feel like, tallow, I think, is having its moment, and there's got to be a reason why. I think people are so just overwhelmed with, we now know that there's things in our foods and in the products that we're putting on our body, and now we know that those are having some negative outcomes for us now that it's been in our bodies for long enough now. And so I think people are exploring alternatives. But now, is this something? Why tallow? Did somebody just accidentally spill their cooking on them one time?
Well,
that's nice,
yeah, like I was saying, tallow is closest to our skin's natural oils. So I was like, well, let's make it and try it out. And it's just like, the more you use tallow lotion, the less you need, your skin stays hydrated. You can feel it. It just like soaks it in, and it's like kind of changes your skin in a really good way. It just stays so hydrated, and that's what we're all looking for, like hydration, repair, and it's just a natural way to do that. So you can use plant-based oils too, but I think what I found is tallow is like the closest to your skin's natural oils. And then it's like, if you want plant-based, it's jojoba oil. And there's a couple other oils.
Wait, Is that not pronounced jojoba oil?
Well, maybe it is jojoba, jojoba, jojoba.
Oh
I
no,
don't
I
know.
don't know.
I don't
I'm
really.
like, that makes sense that it
I
would
don't
be.
even know. I don't know that.
Oh,
It's
okay.
kind of crazy because getting into this business, cosmetics are not regulated unless they,
Oh, really?
yes, unless they're like, if there's anything medicinal in the product, then it has to be FDA regulated. Otherwise, it is not. And it's pretty scary what's in
What?
cosmetics. Like, you
Yeah.
you guys, like we decided not to use plastic except for like we have a shower salt scrub, so we didn't want the jar to break, so we were using plastic for that. But
Mm.
like we're trying to stay away from plastics, and so we ordered glass jars. Well, there's like a film in the glass jars, so now we have to like we're it's just like I don't know if this film's bad for you, but it smelled, so we washed them all. But like, who's washing their glass jars that they're ordering from China or wherever? Because
Yeah.
you're not, and there's just
Yeah.
crap in everything. So it's kind of scary, but we're just producing things that we want, and it's small batch, so we can do this on a small scale, and we're not worried about like making massive income. So we're just creating
True.
products we want for other people, all organic and as best as we can. You know, we're gonna eliminate as many chemicals as we can, but it's kind of scary. You pick up like anything, start reading labels. Start reading labels, and
Oh
if
my
you don't
God.
understand what it means, look it up and just see what you find. And then, you know, jars, like we make this Muscle Mend. It's a sport balm, and this
Mm.
is really good. I'm advertising, but like this is killer. I don't know who's
Hell
making
yeah.
anything like this, but like the stuff we're putting in there is they also produce like small batch double infused like oils like Solomon Seal and Arnica and um so anyway, it's like a passion project. It's so fun. Um
Well,
and I'm
when we
learning.
go back to that question earlier, like, do you think you were wired a certain way?
Yeah.
I think you just answered.
Yeah, right. I'm kind of like super in depth with like these ingredients, and like I just go into rabbit holes about like all these products. But I've always been into like, you know, alternative health things, and I wanted to be a
Mhm.
naturopathic doctor, and I looked into going to that Bastyr naturopathic
Mhm.
college in Seattle. Now they have one in San Diego,
Yeah.
but it was gonna just take so much time, and I was snowboarding, and then I had kids, and I even looked into going again, and it's just I have to do years and years of school. So anyway, this is like a fun project for me to get into natural health kind of things and produce
Hell
something.
yeah. Well, if you want to, this entire thing is a plug for you. So
Okay.
feel free to tell us
Thanks.
about your tallow. I am very curious. I did go onto your Instagram. Can you order it online? So I'm up in Seattle. Could I have some shipped up, or are you only doing it at markets locally?
Yeah, no, we're online. Glow
You are
and Behold lotion.com. Glow and
awesome.
Behold lotion. So, and we have Wave Rave in Mammoth is carrying our stuff now, and Hanson Surf Shop.
Amazing.
And yeah, it's just fun stuff. So go check it out.
Amazing.
Check it out.
Well, I cannot believe you still have energy after everything that you have accomplished in your life. I'm incredibly inspired by what you've achieved and what you're still doing today. And I can't wait to see what's next for you. Um, do you know what's next?
I
You just
have no
riding the wave?
idea. I'm riding the wave. I wanted to snowboard. So basically, you know, I ended my career. I was a mom, did full on 100%, like help out in the classroom, blah, 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 soccer mom. And then my kids are adults on their living on their own now. They're awesome. I love them so much. I love hanging out with them. But I was like, what do I want to do? I don't know what to do anymore. So I just decided, like I love to snowboard. So let's go snowboard. We have a cabin up in Tahoe. And so my husband and I live up here in the winter, and I just snowboard. And then I just kind of naturally got involved in boarding for breast cancer events again, more, just more actively, had more time. And then it's just like one thing led to the next, And I was invited to the World Slush Quarter Pipe Contest, which that was 2 years ago. That was in Mammoth.
Wow.
And I got invited by Pat Bridges, who's the founder of Slush Magazine. I thought he was joking. I got this email and I thought it was a joke. And I go to my husband, like, I got invited to this quarter pipe contest. And he's like, what? Like, kind of just poo-pooed it. And it just set a fire in me, because Dave's like, he's kind of looking at me like, well, that's like, why would you do that? You already had your whole career. He didn't say that, but his look said that. And then I was like, what if I could do that? And I just told him, yes, I was going to show up, because it really makes me mad if somebody's like, I don't know if you should do that. It just pisses me off. So I'm going to do that. And that was gnarly. Well, of course I was the oldest one. I didn't know anybody, because all these, they're like kids competing. They're like 20-year-olds competing, and they're pros. And I didn't really think everything through. And then this quarter pipe was like 20 feet larger than I had ever hit a quarter pipe. And now it's, a modern day legit thing. Like, and the pros are there, and I'm hiking up with like 20-year-olds. And I knew the judges. The judges are all my era. And I was just like, what the hell am I doing here? And now I got to like step up. And I hit it the first time, and Pat Bridges is like, well, what do you think about this? Or you think you're going to be able to hit this? And I came up, to like halfway up on this quarter pipe, and I'm looking at it like literally, like as I'm going up, I have to look up. I have to like eject out of this thing like so much farther than I even could imagine. And I lied to him, and I was like, yeah, it'll be good. And I just kind of pushed myself and did it. I didn't do any tricks. But I did it. And that was kind of an entry point to like my midlife crisis career here.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm so glad you did it, and you did it.
I did it, and that was the scariest thing I've ever done in my whole life. One, because it was the most intimidating environment. I don't know if anyone could imagine like what a 50-year-old woman would feel like with a bunch of 20-year-old dudes mostly, but a handful of girls. But it ended up being the coolest thing, and everyone was super rad. Like, a couple girls came up to me, and they're like, I thank you so much for all you've done in the sport. And I didn't even know they would know who I was, because I've really disappeared from snowboarding for a long time. So anyway, it's just you never know. Exactly what you said, Molly. You just find your passions, and you do things that give you joy, and you're going to find your way. And I've had a whole career, but right now in my life, I don't necessarily have a specific way, but everything's just kind of unfolding in ways that is just like super joyful, because I'm doing what I love to do. And I love how you just stated that. So I think you need to put that out in the world, Molly. I think you got something there.
Well, you're one of the people who's inspired and helped show me the way. So I thank you. And I sure hope that there's snow out there right now for you, but I sure hope we could get out and snowboard soon. And I will definitely come out to one of your Boarding for Breast Cancer events. So I will stay plugged in on the website and on the social medias. And yeah, thank you so much for spending time with me and everyone and for everything that you have done. And I am so grateful to have women like you to look up to. And yeah, I can't wait to check in with you another year from now to hear what else you're creating and doing.
Thank you. Well, thank you. You're always awesome. I met you at that Burton Women's event and have followed you on Instagram ever since, and you're super inspirational too. And I just love what you've got going on. So thanks, girl power. Yeah, woo.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks again, and I appreciate you. And everybody go out and buy her book and some beef tallow.
Okay. Thanks, you guys.
Yay.